A police officer forced a young boy to lick his dirty shoe, and what his older brother did was impressive. The officer smirked, pointing at his muddy boot. "Clean this with your tongue, kid." The 12-year-old boy trembled, tears streaming down his face. But he didn't know that this moment would be the start of a transformation that would change the entire system of his city. If you're starting to watch now, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell. Comment which city you're watching this incredible story from, which took place in March 2025. Alex was only 12 when he was humiliated in front of dozens of people in the city square. His only crime? Selling candy to help his mother pay the bills. But his older brother Michael, a 27-year-old lawyer who had just passed the bar exam, wouldn't let this injustice go unpunished. What no one knew was that Michael had installed a micro-camera on his little brother after other street vendors reported cases of police abuse in the neighborhood. Alex's humiliation was just the tip of the iceberg of a much larger system of corruption and abuse of power. "You may have forced me to clean your shoe today," Alex whispered through his tears as he walked home. "But my brother will make you swallow every moment of this humiliation." Michael watched the video dozens of times, his hands shaking with anger. On the computer screen, numerous files revealed a network of corruption that extended far beyond this police officer. But where to start? How could a single freshly graduated lawyer take on such a deeply corrupt system? The answer came from an unexpected place. Among the documents he was beginning to gather, Michael found something that chilled his blood, a list of names, dates, and amounts. And right at the top of that list was the name of the city's chief of police. But as Michael began to dig deeper, he realized he was taking on people far more dangerous than he had imagined. His phone started receiving strange calls, and suspicious cars began to lurk around his house. Is it worth risking everything, his career, his safety, and even his life, to seek justice? Or are some battles too big to be won? This is just the beginning of a story that will make you question everything you know about justice, courage, and the power of a brother determined to make a difference. The city, a bustling metropolis where shadows of inequality stretch between historic monuments. The central square, a symbol of freedom, becomes the stage for the contrast between power and vulnerability. Michael grew up observing this reality from the windows of the small apartment he shared with his mother, Sarah, and his brother Alex, in a working-class neighborhood. Sarah, widowed for 5 years, works as a nurse doing double shifts to allow her sons to study. Her husband, David, died during a police intervention gone wrong, a story that never convinced the family but was dismissed as a closed case. Officer James, the protagonist of Alex's humiliation, is no novice. With 15 years of service, he has built a reputation based on fear. His superiors consider him effective in maintaining order on the streets, particularly with street vendors and the homeless. His official record is impeccable, but the neighborhood residents know his cruelty well. Michael is not an ordinary lawyer. Graduating with honors, he devoted his years of study to social justice, inspired by his father's unexplained death. During his internship at Legal Aid, he began mapping patterns of police violence in the city center, building a network of informants among shopkeepers, residents, and even some disgruntled police officers. Alex, despite his 12 years, already carries in his eyes the maturity of those who know the harshness of life. A studious student in the morning, he sells candy in the afternoon to help at home, dreaming of becoming a doctor one day. His humiliation in the square was not an isolated incident. It was part of a systematic pattern of abuse of power. The chief of police, Robert, a central figure in Michael's investigation, has built an empire within the institution. His impeccable appearance and speeches about order and progress mask a complex network of extortion and violence. Every street vendor, every informal trader, every homeless person who disturbs the order is a source of income for his system. The city square, with its imposing statues and Republican symbolism, witnesses daily the confrontation between those who have power and those who struggle to survive. It's here that the police officers in Robert's network conduct their law enforcement operations, which are in reality just brutal demonstrations of power. Among the secondary characters, there's Emma, an investigative journalist who has been trying for years to expose corruption within the police, but always runs into threats and closed doors. She will become a crucial ally for Michael. Another key character is Sergeant Tom, a veteran police officer who, disgusted by corruption, has begun gathering evidence against his superiors, but never had the courage to report them. The video of Alex's humiliation will be the trigger that finally pushes him to take a stand. The setting of the story extends beyond the square, reaching the corridors of power in the courthouse, police stations, and police headquarters. Each place carries its own tensions and secrets, forming a complex web of interests and dubious loyalties. The culture of silence and impunity, so deeply rooted in the institutions, will be the biggest obstacle to overcome. Michael knows he's not just fighting against a few corrupt police officers, but against an entire system designed to protect the powerful. As Michael delves deeper into his investigation, he uncovers a web of corruption that extends far beyond what he initially imagined. He discovers that the extortion scheme is linked to a larger plan of urban renewal in the city center. Large real estate developers have an interest in expelling informal traders and low-income residents to increase property values in the area. The more Michael uncovers, the more dangerous his quest becomes. But with each revelation, his determination grows stronger, fueled by a deep sense of justice and the memory of his father. He knows that he's not just fighting for Alex or for his family, but for every person who has suffered under this corrupt system. Michael's investigation began to gain momentum when he discovered a pattern in the incidents reported in the city center. All street vendors who underwent checks had one thing in common. They were forced to pay a weekly fee to continue working, money that went up the chain of command to the chief of police, Robert. The first obstacle arose when Michael tried to formalize the initial complaints. Files mysteriously disappeared, witnesses suddenly changed their statements, and evidence was lost in the maze of bureaucracy. The system was clearly organized to protect itself. The situation worsened when Alex began to experience harassment at school. Previously, friendly teachers became cold towards him, and his grades began to drop without explanation. Michael discovered that Robert's son was a school inspector, with influence over several schools in the region. Sarah started receiving visits at her workplace. Well-dressed men spoke with her superiors, and soon she was informed that there would be necessary cuts in the staff. The message was clear. Either Michael backed down or his family would suffer the consequences. The conflict reached a new level when Emma, the journalist, managed to access documents linking the extortion system to important politicians. That same night, her apartment was mysteriously burglarized and her computer stolen. Nothing else was taken. Sergeant Tom, who had promised to testify, was transferred to a remote police station. His last contact with Michael was a hurried phone call. "They know everything. Be careful who you trust." The pressure intensified when Michael began receiving photos of his brother being followed on his way to school. The images were accompanied by clear messages. It's still time to forget about all this. But the crucial point came when Michael discovered that his father's death had not been a simple altercation with the police. David was about to expose a similar corruption system when he was accidentally killed during an intervention. The officer responsible for the operation, the then Commissioner Robert, now Chief of Police. This discovery changed everything. It was no longer just about Alex's humiliation. It was a cycle of violence and impunity that had lasted for decades. Michael realized he was faced with a choice: back down and protect his family, or move forward and risk losing everything in the name of justice. As the stakes grew higher, Michael found himself at a crossroads. He knew that pursuing this case could put everything he loved at risk, but he also realized that backing down would mean letting the corrupt system win, perpetuating the cycle of injustice that had already claimed his father's life. With a heavy heart but unwavering determination, Michael made his decision. He would push forward, not just for Alex or for his father, but for every person who had suffered under this corrupt regime. He knew the road ahead would be dangerous, but he was prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead in his quest for justice. As the main investigation unfolded, several subplots began to emerge, making the case even more complex. Emma discovered that the extortion system was linked to a larger plan of urban renewal in the city centre. Major real estate developers had a vested interest in expelling informal traders and low-income residents to increase property values in the area. An important subplot involved Lisa, Officer James's wife, who secretly contacted Michael. She revealed that her husband had been coming home increasingly disturbed, drinking excessively and having nightmares. During a drunken night, he confessed to being involved in something far more serious than extortion, including forced disappearances of people threatening to expose the system. Meanwhile, Alex developed an unlikely friendship with Ryan, the son of one of the police officers involved in the system. The two boys, initially unaware of the connection between their families, grew close at school. When Ryan discovered his father was involved in the persecution of Alex's family, he began collecting evidence in secret, recording compromising conversations at home. Sergeant Tom, although transferred to a remote location, didn't remain inactive. He started building his own network of informants, discovering that the system extended to other cities. Each week he sent new information to Michael via an elaborate system of coded messages. A significant turning point occurred when Sarah, during her work as a nurse at the courthouse, accidentally found documents proving the link between corrupt judges and the police leadership. Her discovery put her in immediate danger, forcing Michael to create an emergency plan to protect his family. The journalist Emma, investigating Chief Roberts' past, discovered that he maintained a second family in another part of the country, supported by money from the corruption system. This information became an asset for pressuring potential witnesses within the police force. A particularly tense subplot involved a group of young lawyers who, inspired by Michael's courage, began collecting testimonies from other victims of police abuse. However, the more cases they documented, the more threats they received, creating a moral dilemma about the limits of their commitment. The case took an unexpected political dimension when an opposition politician who initially supported Michael was caught in secret negotiations with Chief Robert, revealing that corruption crossed all spheres of public power. As these subplots intertwined, Michael realized the enormity of what he was facing. It wasn't just about a few corrupt officers or even a corrupt police chief. The entire system, from the streets to the highest levels of government, was compromised. The complexity of the situation tested Michael's resolve. He found himself not just fighting for justice, but navigating a treacherous web of political interests, personal vendettas, and deep-rooted societal issues. Despite the mounting pressure and danger, each new revelation strengthened Michael's determination. He knew that unraveling this complex network was the key to not just solving his brother's case, but to bringing about real, lasting change in the city. The turning point of the story came on a rainy Thursday in March. Michael was in his office reviewing documents when he received an anonymous call, Central Archives, File 2547B. It was Sergeant Tom's voice. That same night, with Emma's help and using his contacts at the police station, Michael managed to access the archives. What he found there completely changed the course of the investigation. The original report of his father's death had been falsified. The crime scene photos, hidden in the file, clearly showed that David had been executed with a shot to the back of the head, not during a confrontation as officially stated. Even more shocking, with the report was a detailed list of 27 other similar executions, all linked to the then Commissioner Robert and his group. Each victim had one thing in common: they were about to expose the corruption system. The discovery came at a high price. The next morning, Alex didn't show up at school. A message was delivered to Michael. Now it's personal. 24 hours to hand over all documents, or your brother disappears like your father. Sarah's desperation was visible, but this time she didn't cry. Instead, she picked up her phone and made a surprising call. "Eleanor, it's me, Sarah. It's time to tell the truth about that night." Eleanor was Robert's ex-wife, who had mysteriously disappeared 10 years ago. Everyone believed she had left the country, but in reality, she was in hiding, protected by a network of women victims of domestic violence. Sarah, who worked for the Roberts at the time, had helped her escape and kept this secret for a decade. Elena possessed a USB drive containing incriminating videos of her ex-husband, including confessions of ordered assassinations. She had never used this material for fear of retaliation against her daughter, but Alex's kidnapping changed everything. Meanwhile, Ryan, Robert's son, discovered where Alex was being held. Torn between family loyalty and his conscience, he secretly contacted Michael. "Your brother is in the abandoned warehouse in the industrial district, but you should know, it's not just him. There are others there, people they want to make disappear." Time was running out. Michael had to act, but he knew that any hasty move could cost Alex's life and that of the other prisoners. That's when Emma had a brilliant idea: use the city's own surveillance cameras, which Robert's network controlled, against them. With the help of a hacktivist, they managed to access the surveillance system. The footage not only showed the location of the prisoners, but also recorded the movements of the corrupt police officers, creating a complete map of the criminal operation. The turning point materialized when Sergeant Tom, risking everything, managed to convince 10 honest police officers to join the cause. This was no longer just an investigation now. It was a rescue operation that would expose decades of corruption and violence. Michael had all the pieces of the puzzle: evidence of his father's murder, Elena's videos, the surveillance camera recordings, a team of trusted police officers, and most importantly, the location of Alex and the other victims. But Chief Robert also had his assets. An informant within the prosecutor's office had alerted him to the entire operation. He now knew that his empire was about to collapse, and, like a cornered animal, he was ready to do anything to survive. As the pieces fell into place, Michael realized the true magnitude of what he was about to undertake. This wasn't just about saving Alex or avenging his father anymore. It was about dismantling an entire system of corruption that had terrorized the city for decades. With a team of allies from various walks of life, honest police officers, a determined journalist, a hacktivist, and victims turned whistleblowers, Michael prepared for the most crucial night of his life. The city seemed to hold its breath as the sun set. In the abandoned warehouse, Alex and the other prisoners sensed a change in the air, a mixture of fear and hope. On the streets, Robert's corrupt officers moved nervously, aware that something big was about to happen, but unsure from where the blow would come. As midnight approached, Michael gathered his team for a final briefing. Looking at the faces around him, Emma's determined gaze, Sergeant Tom's grim nod, Sarah's tearful but resolute expression, he felt a surge of courage. "What we do tonight," Michael said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment, "is not just for Alex or for my father. It's for every person who has suffered under this corrupt system. It's for the future of our city." With those words, the operation to bring down Chief Robert and his corrupt empire began. The next few hours would determine not just the fate of Alex and the other prisoners, but the future of the entire city. The dawn was marked by the deafening roar of sirens and helicopters. Michael's operation began with surgical precision. Teams coordinated by Sergeant Tom advanced simultaneously on several points of the city, including police stations and headquarters. At the detention site where Alex was held, the rescue team led by Michael encountered strong resistance. Gunshots echoed through the dark corridors of the abandoned building. Michael, heart pounding, moved forward with determination, knowing every second counted. Meanwhile, Emma and her team of journalists broadcast every movement live. Shocking images of corrupt officers being arrested and incriminating documents seized flooded social media and television channels. Chief Robert, cornered, attempted one last desperate move. He kidnapped Sarah from the vigil in the city square, broadcasting an ultimatum: "Stop the operation or she dies." The crowd panicked, but Sarah kept her calm, looking directly at the camera and saying, "Don't stop. Do what's right." At this crucial moment, Ryan, still recovering, used his contacts to locate his father's secret bunker. The information was quickly relayed to Michael's team. In the detention facility, Michael finally reached the room where Alex was held. The moment of reunion between the brothers was brief but intense. "I knew you'd come," Alex said, with a mixture of relief and pride. The capture of Chief Robert became a race against time. He was trying to reach his bunker, dragging Sarah with him. The city streets transformed into a battlefield, with high-speed chases and exchanges of gunfire. The climax reached its peak when Michael, after securing Alex's safety, joined the pursuit of Robert. In a dramatic scene on a bridge, Michael confronted Robert face to face. "It's over, Chief," Michael declared, his voice firm despite the exhaustion. Robert, cornered, held Sarah as a human shield. "You don't understand, kid. The system is bigger than all of us. There will always be someone to take my place." At that moment, Sarah, in a surprising act of courage, managed to break free, unbalancing Robert. Michael seized the opportunity to disarm him, finally putting handcuffs on the man responsible for years of terror and corruption. The scene was captured live by dozens of cameras. The image of Michael handcuffing Chief Robert instantly became iconic, symbolizing the victory of justice over corruption. Within hours, the operation resulted in the arrest of dozens of corrupt police officers, involved politicians, and associated criminals. Incriminating documents were seized, exposing the extent of the corruption network that had controlled the city for years. As the sun reached its zenith in the sky, Michael, Alex, and Sarah embraced in front of the courthouse, surrounded by a cheering crowd. The city breathed a sigh of relief, feeling for the first time in years the hope of a more just future. The aftermath was immediate and far-reaching. The fall of Robert's corruption system triggered a series of events that no one could have fully predicted. Investigations were opened in other cities, exposing similar networks of corruption. The public, emboldened by Michael's success, began demanding greater transparency and accountability from their institutions. As the dust settled, Michael realized that this was not the end, but rather the beginning of a new chapter. The fight against corruption and injustice would be ongoing, but now the city had hope. People were no longer afraid to speak up, to demand their rights, to expect better from those in power. Looking at his family and the celebrating crowd, Michael knew that their struggle had been worth it. They had not just saved Alex or avenged his father, they had given an entire city its voice back. In the months following the operation that shook the city, the entire country experienced a profound transformation. The fall of the corruption system led by Chief Robert triggered a series of events that no one could have fully anticipated. Michael, now recognized as a symbol of integrity and courage, was appointed to a leadership position within the prosecutor's office. His first act was to establish a permanent task force to investigate and prevent police corruption throughout the city. Alex, inspired by his brother's bravery and his own experience, decided to study law. He became an eloquent spokesperson for young people from marginalized communities, using his story to inspire change and promote social justice. Sarah transformed her pain into action. She founded an NGO dedicated to supporting families who were victims of police violence, offering legal and psychological assistance. Her tireless work helped heal deep wounds in the community. Sergeant Tom took on a crucial role in restructuring the police force. He implemented training programs focused on human rights and ethics, and established a rigorous system of internal control to prevent abuses. Emma won a prestigious journalism award for her courageous coverage of the case. Her work inspired a new generation of investigative journalists committed to truth and holding power accountable. Ryan, the young man who had helped despite his family ties, became an instructor at the police academy, dedicating himself to training officers with a strong sense of ethics and duty towards the community. The changes, however, were not easy. There was resistance from conservative sectors and attempts to sabotage the reforms. But popular pressure, fueled by the vivid memory of recent events, maintained the momentum of transformation. A year after the operation, an emotional ceremony was held in the city square. A memorial was unveiled, paying tribute to all the victims of the corruption system, including David, Michael, and Alex's father. During the ceremony, Michael gave a speech that touched the hearts of all present. What we have accomplished here is not an end, but a beginning. Corruption and injustice are enemies that demand constant vigilance. But today, looking at all of you, I know we are no longer alone in this fight. Together we can build the city and the country we deserve. As the crowd applauded, Alex and Sarah joined Michael on the stage. Their image, three ordinary people who had defied a corrupt system and won, became a symbol of hope for the entire nation. The city's story showed the world that change is possible, even in the face of the most daunting challenges. And although the road ahead was still long, the city now walked with its head held high, determined to never again bow to injustice. As the sun set on this new chapter in the city's history, Michael, Alex, and Sarah looked out at the crowd. They saw not just faces, but a community united, ready to stand up for what's right. They realized that their personal struggle had ignited a spark of change that would continue to burn bright, lighting the way for a more just and equitable future for all.